David Tollinger's Very, Very Bad Day. A Business Casual Descent into Hell. By Sevastian Winters.
Have you ever had one of those days where it seems like all the stars are aligned against you? Or it seems like the universe itself has decided to teach you some sort of thoroughly unimportant lesson whose only message seems to be, fuck you, and only you in particular, today?
You know the day. This is the day you flip off the sky and hope God actually does exist, just so that someone for sure gets your message. David Tollinger was having just such a day.
It all started when his cat unplugged his phone the night before, which died before the alarm could wake him up.
He was supposed to wake at 6:15 a.m. for the biggest meeting of his year, a quarterly pitch to the regional VP and the European clients from Frankfurt. His team was counting on him. The numbers were solid, the graphs were pretty, and David Tollinger, senior strategy consultant at Lithos and Maine, was supposed to carry the whole thing on his overworked, undercompensated back. He'd even broken his own rule and brought his work home with him the night before on a company-issued laptop. But instead of waking to his usual alarm, he woke to a quiet apartment and the ambient dread of sunlight that was far too bright.
7:52 a.m. "Shit!" he yelled, kicking his feet out of bed and immediately stepping in cold cat vomit. It squelched between his toes. His laptop bag, propped beneath the nightstand, was soaked with something that, upon examination, had the very distinct smell of cat piss. Thankfully, the laptop itself was still sitting on an end table, but it was going to need to go to work with him in a different bag. The cat, a vindictive orange lump named Chairman Meow, blinked at him from atop the dresser and flicked its tail in satisfaction.
He hobbled to the bathroom, knocked over a half-full cup of coffee from the night before, and bashed his shin into the porcelain tub hard enough to see stars. There was a small blood trail by the time he limped into the kitchen. A few minutes later, the toaster flared. Literally, it sparked blue and orange and white-hot colors and smoked. His last 2 slices of bread turned black. He yanked the cord and threw the whole thing into the sink. He could deal with the rest of it later.
He opened the fridge door to search for other options. Half a bottle of lemon juice that he didn't remember buying, but if pressed would have had to ask if it had come with the apartment, a suspicious bag of kale, and a single cheese stick of indeterminate age. He looked at the clock and shut the fridge. No food, no coffee, no time. He sprinted to the laundry room, hoping for a miracle. The dryer had, as happens on days like this, stopped working the night before, midway through its cycle. Everything inside was cold, damp. He pulled on the driest items he could find: wet boxer briefs, moist socks, pants with a wrinkled crotch, and a pale blue shirt that felt tight across the chest. A few minutes later, he shoved the laptop into an old gym bag and rushed outside to step into a waiting cab. The cab was double-parked and being ticketed. The driver, an irate man with a long black beard and a turban, was in a screaming match with a meter maid and tried to lecture her, through his thick Middle Eastern accent, on the sovereign citizen doctrine. David slid into the back seat, felt something uncomfortable, and immediately got out again. The seat was wet, wetter than his still damp clothes from the malfunctioning dryer. He cursed under his breath. Shit! His phone had managed to pick up a 10% charge while he was getting dressed and missing breakfast, so he opened the app and called for an Uber. 8 blocks into the ride, his Uber driver swerved to avoid a cat on the corner of 30th and Elm and instead hit a curb, which destroyed the front tire and bashed in the rim. The driver apologized through tears. David jumped out of the car and sprinted the remaining 6 blocks in clammy clothes, his leather shoes slapping the pavement like soggy flippers. When he got to the office, he realized he'd left his laptop in the Uber. He collapsed into his office chair and dived his head between his hands,
grasping at his hair as he did his damnedest not to scream. Sweat pooled under his arms. He assessed his situation. He would have to wear a blazer, despite the heat. He could borrow another laptop. He could download his presentation from the cloud. A few minutes and some keystrokes later, he sighed a deep sigh of relief as the file finished loading.
And that's when he saw it.
A sealed box with a ribbon, sugar-free Belgian-style artisan dark chocolates sitting on the counter, tagged with a post-it that simply read, "Good luck this morning, Dave. We're counting on you." It was from Michelle Adamantis, the VP of Operations. He didn't even know she knew who he was. "Breakfast of Champions," he whispered as he unfastened the ribbon and opened the top of the box. Inside, each handcrafted piece of guilt-free chocolate was pristine, glossy, cool to the touch, little domes of cocoa comfort. Dave barely noticed. He was so hungry, he could eat a coworker. One piece. Then two.
Then a third, to balance the second.
Then all 12. Then the bottom tray. They were sugar-free, healthy even, and one by one, they satiated his hunger. He tossed the empty box into the recycling and headed for the conference room. The cramp started at the beginning of the slide presentation. By slide 11, he was clenching so hard his voice trembled. By slide 34, he felt sweat beading along his lower back. Hot, sticky, panic sweat. His vision pulsed at the edges like a camera trying to focus. His stomach rumbled again, louder this time, like a lion clearing its throat. He kept talking. The words came out tight, clipped, slightly panicked. And if you look here at Q2 projections, gurgle, you'll notice the adjusted margins reflect tighten, clench, pray. A bead of sweat ran down his temple. He turned away from the group to point at the screen. That's when it hit him. He wasn't going to make it. Not to the end of the presentation. Not to the bathroom. Not even to the next sentence.
His colon issued a final warning, an internal scream, a pressure shift so dramatic it nearly knocked him off balance.
And then it happened. Right there, mid-graph, mid-sentence, in front of the regional VP and 3 Germans in tailored suits, David Tollinger shit his pants. Not a subtle incident, not a whisper, not a maybe. It started with a loud, voluminous fart and ended with the unmistakable sound and smell of a large volume of highly pressurized liquid forcing itself through a tiny hole at full blast. Utter and complete cataclysm. Hot, loud, spreading. A young intern audibly gasped. One of the Germans flinched. The conference room fell silent, except for the sound of David's own breathing and the faint, horrifying rustle of slacks soaked in failure. There was nothing to say, nothing to salvage, no reboot, no pivot. He paused, then took a deep breath and calmly said, "Thank you for your time." And he strode, out of that room with all the dignity a man in soiled trousers can manage. He hit the elevator button, waited more. It was stuck on floor 6. So he took the stairs. Every single step. Squishing. He got to the lobby, walked outside, found a bus stop bench, sat down in his own shame, looked up at the sky, and began to laugh. I hope you're watching, you giant celestial dick. The more he thought about his morning, the more he laughed. Because the truth was, despite all of his efforts,
all he had managed to do was survive.
He'd lost his pride, his pants, and most definitely his job. But he was still alive. He felt the rush of another shit coming his way. He just shrugged and just let her rip. "In for a penny, in for a pound," he said with a smile to the mortified woman who had sat beside him to await her coming bus. As he made his way slowly home to decide the next chapter in his life, he knew he would remember this day, the day the universe chose violence. "So, anyhow, tell me more about your bad day?"